Household budgets are finite, but house prices still just seem to be going up and up and up. If you're looking for a new home, does it even make sense to buy? Or has the time come when renting is actually a better financial bet? With us to weigh the choices in the provincial capital in Seton Village, Shannon Lee Simmons, certified financial planner and founder of the New School of Finance, and in Midtown, Benjamin Tal, deputy chief economist of CIBC World Markets. And we're grateful to have you two on tonight for what is a very, very timely conversation. I know there are so many people who are watching us tonight who are wondering, buy, rent, neither. They're pulling their hair out. They don't know what to do. Let's just get this on the record off the top. Shannon Lee Simmons, do you rent? Did you buy? What are your accommodations?
I rented for a very long time, frustratingly, in Toronto, and then eventually I bought our house from my landlord. And I don't know that I would have been able to buy in Toronto if I didn't have that very unique circumstance. So I make that very clear with people because otherwise it feels like, how can you do this?
Okay. Benjamin, how about you? Do you rent? Did you buy? What's your story?
No, we did buy a long time ago. Prices were much more normal back then. Since then, of course, they went up very significantly. So today, I don't know what I will do, but back then it was a clear choice.
Well, that was the key follow-up question I was going to ask, which is if presented with the same set of circumstances today, are you clear in your own mind that you would be buying today as you did back then?
Not very clear, quite frankly, because I think that prices are crazy, quite frankly. And I believe they will continue to go up. So there is an affordability issue here, and you have to make a decision what kind of life you want to live. So I'm not so sure I will be buying now, but that depends on the specific situation of a person. The point that I'm making basically is that we have to break the negative stigma associated with renting. Basically, I want to create a situation in which you are 35 years old, you are married, you have two kids, and you are renting. Nothing is wrong with you. That's the way we should look at renting, the way it is in Berlin, in London, or in Manhattan. And you know what? If you think that Toronto is unaffordable now, you wait. This is just the beginning. It will be even more unaffordable. And that's why rent must be part of the solution. We cannot talk about just buying a house and maximizing the propensity to buy a house like something is wrong with not doing that. I think we have to change the way we think about it.
Shannon, there are people who live in New York City who think there is absolutely nothing wrong in their 40s, 50s, 60s with renting. And they live in Manhattan Island and it's all A-OK. How is it that we somehow got it into our head that to live in perhaps the most expensive city in Canada, I guess it's us or Vancouver, somehow it's scandalous if you're in your 30s or 40s and you're still renting?
Right. I think that, I mean, anecdotally, I hear this from clients all the time too. I think this is maybe the first generation where that's happening, where if you compare to cities like London or New York, there's been several generations of, people that grew up in rental flats and rental places, and then they just assume that that's normal. Whereas a lot of the people who are like the millennials that are trying to get in, they didn't grow up necessarily like the ones who are really passionate about home buying. Maybe that's not how they grew up, or maybe this is the first massive generation that's moving through and assumed when they were younger that they would own a home, and now they're adjusting those expectations for the same time. So I think it has something to do with expectations not being met of what you were told your whole life, and then the economic and financial reality of like what it is today. And I don't know that it's always the best decision to buy anymore given the prices and where you want to live.
Well, let me pursue that, Benjamin, with you. If, as you have said, you are quite convinced that housing prices are going to continue to go up and up and up by dramatic amounts, even as today you call house prices crazy, if you can get in and purchase now, should you?
Well, it's a question of what you want to do, the way you want to live. It's very specific. You cannot really give a blanket answer here. But I do believe that from a long-term perspective, house prices in Canada and in Toronto in particular will continue to rise, not at the rate that we're seeing now, which is unsustainable, but the demographic story and the supply story still suggest that house prices will rise. Now, the question is how quickly? And that's a function of what we do. Because the reason why we have this conversation is because of the fact that rent must be part of the solution. If you have more people having more choices to rent, then less people will be buying houses, and therefore demand will go down, supply will rise, and maybe we will stabilize at a reasonable level. So it's not written in stone where prices are going and how quickly. It's a function of what we do, but we need leadership here. We need policies, and we need to think about rent as part of the solution. So it really depends on what we do in the future. At this point, everything that we do is we are trying to fight supply issues with demand tools. We are doing all those stress tests and all kinds of other things, while the real issue facing the Toronto, the Ontario, the Canadian housing market is the lack of supply. And that's the number one reason. If we don't fix it, that will not go anywhere. And part of fixing it is providing a better supply of rental units, better options here.
We are going to come back later in our discussion to the issue of government policy and what that can do to help. But Shannon, I still want to get you on the record on this angle of the story. If you can make it work, if financially you can make it work, if you're not going to be spending 90% of your income on housing, and that you can do it reasonably so, is it still the philosophy that you urge people to buy if they can?
I do, but there's so much that goes into that. So just listening to what you even said, as long as you can afford to, which means you're not overspending on your fixed expenses, there's still ample room in your budget every single month for a regular life and to save money for retirement outside of just relying on your house. If you're in that situation, then homeownership can be great because number one, you're forced equity that you're building every single month by paying down your mortgage. And if housing prices do continue to rise, you're going to partake in that growth as well over time. And second of all, you could use it as collateral, as leverage later on. You can downsize. There are more options, but it's not the only option. So, when I'm talking to people, I usually say, if you can afford it, I do think that, buying something can be a big part of that wealth pie. But the real education comes around. The real choice matrix I see is being house poor and buying versus renting smart. And that's where I change my tune because that's really the choice where a lot of people find themselves. Because if we can all afford to buy and still do all the things, then why not? But it really comes down to being house poor versus renting smart. And renting smart is, I completely agree, is critical. And but there are lots of issues that people come to me with their fears about renting for the long term that we can talk about later with like policy that might be able to help on that.
Sure, but I want to better understand what house poor means. So let me do a quick follow up with you on
Yeah.
that. I know once upon a time, you aimed to spend about a third of your income on your mortgage. That was sort of the benchmark you wanted to hit. So today, if you don't want to be house poor, what's the sort of reasonable maximum you ought to be aiming to spend on a mortgage as a percentage of your income?
So I think that still holds as a rough, if it's coming in around 35% of your take home pay, it's likely that you can probably float the rest of it. But there's so much more that goes into that. So I find that that's just like a jumping off point. So when I'm running those numbers with clients, I'm looking at all of your fixed expenses. So not just the housing, the insurance, the property tax, the utilities. What about life insurance? What about disability insurance or health insurance that you're paying? What about you might have car payments. What about if you're going to have future children and they're going to be in daycare and there's $1,000 a month to $2,000 a month going out? So there's lots of other fixed expenses in our life that doesn't get put into the total debt service ratio calculation that, a lender is going to use to give you a mortgage. So when I'm looking at someone to say, are you house poor? I'm looking at what are those fixed costs of your life that make you feel safe and secure and happy. So even whether or not that's even a gym membership, that matters. If you can't do that and that was a huge hit to your lifestyle, you're going to feel that if you can't do it, and you might do it anyways. And then we're looking at credit card debt. So looking at those fixed expenses, then also making sure that there's enough disposable income that you can feel like you can live a normal life for yourself. So for some people that's much more than others, but a mortgage is 25 to 30 years. You don't want to have to be on your best financial behavior for decades, because eventually what I've seen time and time again is that overstretch, the assumption that you're going to make more money later on, but the amount of income that's coming in doesn't go up by enough to kind of combat the cost of living that and like lifestyle inflation that can happen. And then you have people that are going into credit card debt. So long and short of it is, house poor means there's not enough money to put aside money for retirement in addition to paying your mortgage, and that you're so tight every month that you feel like you're constantly in a state of credit card debt. So, it goes up by 3,000, you hammer it down. It goes up by, 1,000, it hammers it down because you can never get ahead in that emergency account. That's house poor.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, Benjamin, obviously one of the key questions everybody asks themselves when they go to buy a house is what's it going to cost to get money? And we know that interest rates are historically low right now. We also, mind you, heard the American Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, musing the other day that, if the economy takes off big time in the United States because of the Biden stimulus package, potentially she has to look at higher interest rates in the future. What do you tell your clients right now about what interest rates are likely to do over the next year or two?
Yes. So first of all, let's go back to the previous question regarding how rich you are before you buy a house. Actually, when you buy a house, the eve of buying a house, that's when you're actually very rich because you don't have debt and you're relatively young and you probably don't have kids. So when you look at this cost, don't assume that that's your cost. Your cost tomorrow, when you have kids and when you buy a house, is like much more than what it is now. And that's a mistake that many people make. That's one thing. The other is, of course, interest rates, because as we suggested, they are historically low, and you cannot make plans based on those kind of interest rates. Now, if you're under the age of 30, you probably are unfamiliar with the word inflation. But there is a word in the Canadian language, in English, it's inflation. It's there. I checked in the Oxford Dictionary, still there. And it was missing in action for 30 years. And you know what? We don't know. We print money like there is no tomorrow. The government is spending. We are all familiar with the story. So clearly, when you print money and when people start spending, there is a risk of higher inflation. And let's face it, nobody knows. Nobody knows, including the Fed and the Bank of Canada, how sticky this inflation will be. We don't know. We don't even pretend to know, which means that there is a risk that those interest rates will be rising. The Bank of Canada is already telling you that they will start raising interest rates in, let's say, late 2022. It's a guess. They don't know, but they might start raising interest rates. Clearly, long-term rates started to rise. The 5-year mortgage rate started to rise. That will continue, especially if we have inflation. We are going to see a very strong economic growth in the second half of the year when people start spending this mountain of money that they're sitting on. So there is a risk that inflation will rise, that the interest rates will be rising, and that's normal because that's where we should be going. So when you make your plans, think about that. And I know that there is all kinds of stress tests, but reality, you have to make sure that you can live with interest rates that are, let's say, 200 basis points higher, 2% higher than they are now. And we have to remember one thing. People say, and that's extremely important, yes, they will rise, but they will remain very, very low. I remember in the 90s when interest rates were 12%. Irrelevant. Irrelevant. 100% of debt in Canada was taken in a low interest rates environment. So when they start going up, the effectiveness of higher interest rates will be much more significant than any other time in history. So our sensitivity to higher interest rates went up because of this element of debt. And that's extremely important to understand. Every basis point counts. I estimate now that 1% increase in interest rates today is equivalent to 2% increase just 10 years ago. So the effectiveness of monetary policy is rising, something to remember.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. Shannon, I am sure that it will come as no surprise to anybody watching this or listening to this right now that house prices in Toronto are going through the roof, and everybody sort of understands and expects that right now, and they make their calculations accordingly. I suspect what they are extremely surprised at is that you can go an hour and a half southwest of Hamilton to a place called Tillsonburg, which starts with a T but is not like Toronto in any other way. And home prices went up year over year there in Tillsonburg by 40%. Does it make sense to you to lock in a mortgage at prices that could very well go down from here as interest rates go up?
Does it make sense? That's a big question. So I think no, just nobody knows exactly where housing prices are going to go depending on where you are. We can make our best estimates. So my advice to people always is, yes, there is a low interest rate right now, which does allow an opportunity for people who may have been sitting on the sidelines waiting to make a move. The pandemic has really helped people to be, location decentralized. They don't have to live in Toronto anymore and still maintain the same income that they had before. So what's happening is it's putting all these other places outside of the GTA on the map for the first time as a realistic place that you could buy a home and still keep your wage. And so if there's a situation where you don't want to live here anymore, you want to live somewhere else, and yes, there's been a massive increase and maybe that's not sustainable, maybe houses could correct, maybe it would go down, but if you're buying it for a 25-year, 30-year lifestyle, like this is where you're going to plant roots and live forever, then don't get caught up necessarily in what's going to happen on a 3 to 5 year basis with housing prices, because you're not buying it to flip it, you're buying it to live in, and retire in maybe one day. So I think that trying to make those kind of predictions is really hard. And so, but the one thing I would say is that for those people who are expanding their looking outside the GTA for the first time because they are now fully remote and they might be fully remote indefinitely, just making sure that you actually want to live in the place that you're moving to, because if prices do correct in strange ways, which they may in the future, and you would like to come back into the GTA, if prices have continued to rise here too, it may be that much more difficult to do. So I always say, don't look at the short-term market timing of the real estate market, trying to think about buying a house as a long-term strategy, and so it can handle any volatility, which would be the same advice as I would give somebody investing in the stock market.
Now, Benjamin, I know we touched on this a moment ago, but I want to return to it, and I really want to hammer it home because, as we say, there are people living in New York City who don't find it embarrassing at all that they rent because they know they just can't buy. That is just the nature of New York real estate. How do you change the culture of thought of people in Toronto who insist that somehow they're entitled to be able to own property, or they surely ought to be able to own property in Toronto because, after all, their parents and grandparents did, and therefore they should be able to buy, and renting, God forbid, we should never have to consider that option?
Yes, so first of all, let me go back to the previous questions about what I call the Toronto refugees, the ones that left Toronto. So if you put it in perspective, if you look at the overall transactions, real estate transactions, the GTA, and around 300 kilometers around, the GTA and very close areas to the GTA still account for 95% of all transactions, despite this trend that we have seen. So Toronto is still the center of the world. That's the way it is. And you know what? And I believe this trend might reverse itself, because people who moved out of Toronto were under the impression that they will be able to work 100% of the time from home. Not sure that will be the case post-pandemic. Second is that maybe your current employer is okay with you doing that. What about your future one? So that can impact job mobility, if you wish. So I see a situation in which some people actually will be renting a condo in Toronto, staying there over the week, and then go back to their home. It will not be as clear, and this trend will slow down the way we have seen in other centers. So that's this point. The other point regarding, how you convince people, you do it by providing more supply. When you make more affordable rental units available. And I think the only solution to that is not the condo market. Now, most of the rental market is the condo market, and the condo market is the rental market with a lot of investors. That's fine. But if you look at the next wave of renters, there are going to be families with kids. There are going to be older people downsizing. They don't want to deal with a landlord that tomorrow will have to ask them to leave because his daughter or son coming back from university. You need stability. You need stability. You need to deal with a company. You need purpose build. The solution to the affordability crisis in the GTA in Toronto is purpose build apartment buildings rental. It's starting to move, it's starting to rise, but it's really very slow and very small compared to the stock of condos that we see around us. That's the solution. The more this kind of option is available, the more it will be acceptable to people and change their mind. That will take a while, but I think education and more supply will do the trick. That's the way I see it.
All right, Benjamin, follow up on that if you would. Do you think that we have the government policies in place today from the province of Ontario to encourage the kind of quick and significant construction of purpose-built rental that we clearly are going to need now and in the future?
Not even close. Not even close. That's the issue. That's the issue. We need much more than that. We have to make it attractive to developers to decide to go with a purpose build as opposed to a condo. Remember, condo is simple. You build it, you actually pre-sell it, so you have the money, you get the financing, you build it, it takes 3, 4, 5 years, and you basically forget about it. No commitment whatsoever. Purpose build is commitment, is something that you will be with for a long period of time, and you need to come with a different model. In order to do so, you have to attract developers to do so, and there is a lot of money willing to do so. You just need a bit of a break. So we have to be much more creative in a way to provide those kinds of help to developers to make it economical to actually start building. At this point, the only way it makes sense is if you own the land. If you as a developer owns the land, then you can make money out of purpose build. Otherwise, you can't. So we have to think in different ways how to encourage them to actually increase the supply and make it approachable to everybody.
Shannon, can I get you on that? Do you see policies coming out of the current government of Ontario that encourage enough purpose-built rental accommodation to be built?
No, for the exact same reasons. I couldn't agree more with everything that was just said. And I think just one thing that I would add on top of that I hear from people who feel completely priced out as one of the detriments, you've already mentioned this, is that stability piece. So, you know, if your kids start going to a certain school, you don't want to all of a sudden wake up when they're in grade 6 and have to move jurisdictions and then be subject to market rent, that your whole financial plan was based on this rent, and now everything gets blown up and you have to move your family. So that is why people will light themselves on fire financially to buy a home, for that stability piece. So I completely agree that that's like top of mind as far as the purpose-built rentals, is that dealing with a company where you know that you can live there as long as you want to is going to be a huge piece that policy needs to be creative to solve that problem. And the other thing, when we think about New York, even the idea of rent control, I think that's huge. And so the idea that you could build an entire financial plan based on a certain, you know, amount of rent that goes up with inflation or goes up, you know, in some trajectory, so that there's, you know, everybody, it still works, the model still works, but that at no point could there be ridiculous increases in your rent that just throw your whole financial plan just completely off the table. Because it's those two pieces of instability that make people balk at renting, and they feel like scared of it for a lifestyle forever if they're trying to build wealth over time and they're trying to provide stability for their families. So for me, those are the two pieces that are key, that creative policy is going to have to come up for all the reasons that were just mentioned. I really couldn't agree more.
Okay.
Let's discuss rent control, because I think that's very, very important.
Sure.
That's key. And there is a Swedish economist, left wing, and he basically said something like that. Rent control is the best way to destroy a city, maybe besides bombing.
Right, I remember that.
And the question is whether or not he's right. I totally understand where it's coming from, because he's basically saying if you have rent control, nobody will be building, and you're punishing future tenants and basically helping current ones. So that's something that we have to deal with. So I agree that we have to have some sort of a cap, some sort of maximum increase in rent,
Right.
but at the same time, it cannot be like only inflation. It can be, depends on the situation. And that's why I think that the more supply you have, the less rent control will be an issue, because prices will be going down, rent will be going down because of increased supply. And that's why supply is so important. Just applying rent control will simply punish future tenants because availability will not be there. Very important to understand. And then we have to start thinking in a more creative way. For example, when you pay rent, you pay all inclusive. So people say, well, all inclusive, wonderful, I can do whatever I want. Let's break it. Let's say, okay, how much is real rent and how much is all the rest? And then maybe if you know that you're paying for utilities and electricity, you won't spend or waste this kind of, this amount of electricity during the summer or the winter, because you know that you're paying for it. That's one thing. The other is you can get some non-profit companies involved in the equation. Maybe they can actually rent the all units and then sub-rent to tenants because they understand those tenants better. There are many ways of actually making the situation more dynamic. At this point, it's not moving anywhere, and that's the issue.
Okay, a little over 5 minutes to go here, and I want to pivot to a bit of a conversation on how housing purchases are no longer, it seems, about having a place to stay. They have become investment strategies, and for some people, they have become retirement strategies as well. And Shannon, maybe you could pick up the story there. There are clearly a lot of, I guess, boomers and Gen Xers who are counting on the increase in their home's value to act as their pension plan. It's a retirement strategy. In your view, does that make sense?
Well, I mean, I think if you've been so lucky that you purchased, 25, 30 years ago and you're sitting on $1 million of equity that's tax free to you, then yeah, how could it not be part of that retirement plan strategy? And I think that it's provided a lot of confidence with the boomer generation, that it is part of that wealth appreciation over time, that they can use that. What I see though that's really interesting about that, on the front line, is people don't necessarily want to sell their home and downsize. So the whole time they're like, well, the house is worth this, and we always have the house, we always have the house. But then when push comes to shove, if you're attached to your home and that's where you live, you may not want to actually downsize because housing prices are so expensive. Then you might sell and downsize into something, and you spend quite a bit just to downsize again. So this is also where renting could become a really interesting thing for people who want to capitalize on the wealth that's accumulated in their house and then continue to rent. So I think that it absolutely is part of that plan for people. They all think about it, but whether or not and how they extract that equity from their house is a really personal decision and a very emotional decision when it comes to retiring. And the other way that I see real estate helping with retirement plans that's really taken off in times when interest rates are extremely low and housing prices have skyrocketed. So I saw this a lot in 2016, 2017. I'm seeing it again right now, is people who own already. Well, now they get their house reappraised. It's worth several $100,000 more. They borrow cheaply on that equity on their primary residence, and then they use that as a down payment to purchase an income property. So now they're kind of double dipping into the real estate market, and then they're creating some sort of, short-term rental, whether it's Airbnb or even creating maybe a long-term rental for someone else. But again, that's what I see a lot of. And so a lot of people are using that as a retirement strategy, so that not only do you have your primary residence, but now you've also got this other address that's going to provide income to you in retirement. If you don't have a pension, it could replace that kind of income. So I see a lot of that.
Benjamin, do you know when we as a society seem to change our mind and started regarding our homes not as places to live, but rather as retirement income or a pension strategy or an investment strategy, something like that?
Well, it has been happening for a while now, and as long as prices go up, that will continue to be the case. We looked at the GTA, for example, at condo investors, and we found that about 35% of them are in negative cash flow. Basically, they lose money on a monthly basis. They still do it. And when we ask, why are you doing it? They said, no, you don't understand. We're not losing money. Somebody's paying part of our mortgage, and the property value will rise over time, and that's something that will contribute to our well-being in the future. We have to remember that many of those investors are buying those units, because they believe that over time the value will rise, and they're probably right. Also because of the fact that they know that they were lucky enough to get into the real estate market in Toronto 20 years ago. Their kids are not. So they're trying to ensure that their kids have an option to live in Toronto by buying those condos. So I totally understand that it's happening more and more and more. And that's something that will continue to be the case when it comes to the condo market. So overall, we see a huge amount of help from parents to kids. We see a situation in which gifting went up by 30-40% over the past year. Parents are being used as guarantors on a regular basis. So clearly, parents are helping their kids basically to get into the market, which, by the way, is widening the income gap in Toronto and in Canada, because only parents that can do that, which means that kids that don't have wealthy parents cannot do that. That's another aspect, unfortunately, of the situation.
Right. Shannon, let's pick up on this now. I think you referred to this earlier in our conversation, that when you sell your primary residence, you don't have to pay capital gains tax on that sale, which is a part of the tax policy system that renters would argue favors homeowners as opposed to renters who don't have similar kinds of tax advantages in their lives. I wonder, as a result, whether or not the federal government, for example, ought to consider offering renters similar kinds of advantageous tax circumstances, like, I don't know what, maybe expanded room in their tax-free savings accounts or something like that, in order to compensate for the fact that they don't have the advantages homeowners do. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I think that there really just needs to be some creative problem solving. Like it needs to, we need to give renters an opportunity to feel that they have equal skin in the game to save financially on a tax-free basis. So that's really interesting, the idea of, you know, expanding tax-free savings account if you're renting. I don't know how realistic it would be to enforce that, but also the other thing that I would worry about is, okay, so I've got this room in my TFSA, but I don't have, you know, the income to fill it up. So whereas the housing market's just going to go up for some people on its own, I still have to scrimp and save and go without and do other things and change my lifestyle in order to still partake. So it still feels a little bit unfair. I think that there definitely has to be policy around that stability piece. And then I'm not even proponing this. I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if we did see some sort of tax on the sale of a primary residence down the road, if there's been a certain amount of growth or something like that. I'm not saying I'm for or against it. I'm not taking a position, but I wouldn't be shocked if I saw that one day as a way to kind of maybe redistribute wealth from that side of things. But I'm not sure exactly. It's really hard with the rental game to give people that equal opportunity, because if prices for real estate continue to rise at the same level and primary residence is tax free, it really feels like the cards can be stacked against you, because you can save and save and save in RSPs and TFSAs, but if the housing market keeps going up by hundreds of thousands of dollars every 4 or 5 years, how can you compete with that? So it's a real predicament for sure.
Benjamin, in our last minute here, can I get you to weigh in on that notion of what Shannon sounds like she's describing, a bit of a windfall tax on those who, just by sheer luck, have managed to realize a significant amount of additional money in their lives just because they've hung on to a good house that's appreciated in value?
Yes, I doubt it will happen, quite frankly. And if it happens, it will be at such a high level that it will be totally irrelevant, like you see in the US after a significant amount of gain. So I don't think that will be happening anytime soon. So the question is, how can you help renters to basically achieve some sort of standard of living while homeowners getting richer on a daily basis? And the only solution, again, going back to our point before, is that make rent available, make rent cheap. How do you do it? Increase supply. That's the only way to help renters, not by taxing homeowners. That's counterproductive. It's basically by providing a solution, a rental solution for renters, so they don't have to worry about stability and rent inflation going to the sky. I think that's the only solution that is reasonable, in my opinion.
Benjamin Tal and Shannon Lee Simmons, lots of great advice for our viewers and listeners tonight. Thanks to both of you for coming on to TVO and helping us out with this.
Thanks for having me.
A pleasure. Thank you.